Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 151, Roundup. The Tudalong banner was located in the eastern mountain ranges of the Hanjian Mountains. It was to the northwest of the Shayi camp, and leading directly east of was the Biancha 12 tribes. Before this year, it was not a place of contention for both sides, but with Libei's repeatedly retreating battlefront, this place became a strategic point above the battleground. Huilu's squad broke through the checkpoints and watchtowers ahead, so Changzhou camp could only confront them on the west side of the Tudalong banner. Both sides often engage in slanging matches across the marshland of the Tudalong banner. Xiao Qiye took a detour from the Bianbo camp, which just so happened to put him to the south of Changzhou camp. But the collapse blocked off the bridle path leading right to Changzhou camp, and the Tudalong banner lay just to the right. Hassan's squad often wandered around this area. If Xiao Qiye refused to abandon the grains to extricate himself, then he could only come face to face with Hassan with the supplies in tow. However, the grain wagons were too heavy. Wu Ziu's armored cavalry could not run on mud, and the imperial army did not have enough light cavalry to do something about it. Under such circumstances, it was simply too dangerous to turn around and head for the Tudalong banner. Wu Ziu wanted to refute, but Chen Yang and the rest had already turned their horses around. That was a kind of trust that could not be described with words alone. They unconditionally obeyed Xiao Qiye. Even if it was a critical moment of life and death right this moment, they could immediately carry it out, as long as it was Xiao Qiye's commands. Wu Ziu, who stood among them, involuntarily shuddered. It was now a quarter past the hour of Shen, and the sky was overcast, having been affected by the rainstorm. Gu Jin was well acquainted with this area, and the convoy squad entered Tudalong banner. The grain wagons rolled heavily across the mudols, just a little oversight, and they would sink in them. Everyone stilled their breathing and focused with rapt attention, not daring to be sloppy in the slightest. Xiao Qiye wanted to conceal the grain wagons here. No matter how brave the cavalry of Biancha was, they would not enter the Tudalong banner rashly. The marshland was similarly a difficult place for them to navigate. Besides, rainy days affected not just Xiao Qiye but Hassan as well. Meng's inability to do reconnaissance meant that the Saker falcons were not able to do so either. Both sides could not get a clear look at the other party's movements through the rainstorm. They could only rely on their knowledge of the battlefield to make their moves against each other. But this kind of delicate balance could only be maintained in the rainstorm. Once the rain stopped, Xiao Qiye's current squad would not be able to withstand Hassan's assault. Wu Ziu, stay to guard over the grain wagons. Xiao Qiye said rapidly. Let the armored cavalry hang up the chains to surround the grain wagons. The paths around the Tudalong banner were all muddy, and the armored cavalry's heaviness was a deterrent on rainy days. It was easy for the horses' hooves to get bogged down in the mud, so staying behind to watch over the grain wagons was the most appropriate decision to make. The chains were something Xiao Fangxiu had them equipped with. Hook them on the armors, and they could turn the armored cavalry into the grain wagon's armor. That way, even if Hassan could break through Xiao Qiye's guerrilla attack and enter the inner area of the Tudalong banner, he would still be unable to break up the iron wall of the armored cavalry right at once. Xiao Qiye remained in place and said to the imperial army, Hassan is leading the Hanshi tribe. Their speed is fast and their strikes are powerful. We can't catch up to them or stop them. But the east side where they are located is overgrown with bushes, which makes it easy for us to hide. The Saker Falcon can't go ahead with their patrols on rainy days. This is an opportunity. It was clear who was the stronger and weaker one between the enemy and them. Xiao Qiye could not let Hassan's squad remain intact. He would have no chance of winning if that was the case. He had the imperial army split up into small groups to feel their way out of the Tudalong banner's marshland, set up ropes to trip the enemy's horses, then similarly break up and divert the unsuspecting Biancha cavalry all over the Tudalong banner. As long as the Biancha cavalry fell off their horses, they would lose their advantage. Gu Jin should bypass Hassan's squad and rush over to the battlefield at top speed. Xiao Qiye turned around and looked at Gu Jin. Zhao Hui didn't come, and that means the three great training divisions of Liu Yang are unable to move at this moment. The war situation further north is likely to be more dire than we thought. We can only now ask the battleground for reinforcements. Gu Jin had been injured before in the Tudalong banner. He knew the roads of the Tudalong banner by heart. He promptly voiced an acknowledgement and led a row of lightly equipped scouts on ahead. Lao Hu, head northeast. I'll go to the east. Chen Yang, assume personal command here. As Xiao Qiye spoke, he strode forward. No matter what, we have to ensure the army provisions can be successfully delivered to the site of battle. Having followed Xiao Qiye bustle all over the place, Chen Yang knew best about the status of the various granaries reserves in Libei. If Xiao Qiye were defeated, then Chen Yang would have to release a falcon once the rain stopped to inform the northeast supply route to reallocate army provisions up north without further delay. As the convoy squad, their lives and deaths were nowhere near as important as the army provisions for the battlegrounds. This place was close to Hanjian Mountains. The rain would not be stopping any time soon. The imperial army who was lying low in the Mudols had to endure the bone-chilling cold. Their inner garment clung to their skin, having already been drenched through. All their limbs had to be soaked in the mud, and it took less than an hour for all their fingers and toes to be stiff. The autumnal rains of Libei were like blades. August had barely begun yet the temperature had already dropped so low that it appeared snow might fall at any moment. The convoy squad had yet to change into outer coats to keep out the cold. Long before heading out, Xiao Qiye had already asked that they switch the water they carried on hand with on horseback, as strong wine could dispel the cold, and thus it was a pivotal item to have in this frontier of capricious wind and snow. Xiao Qiye crouched in a mudhole and chugged down the wine, one mouthful at a time. For the most part, the battle between Libei and Biancha would not drag past the 8th or 9th month, as a further delay meant the coming of snow, where the grasslands of both parties would be ravaged by raging snowstorms. During the long and harsh winter, groups of Libei's military craftsmen would spend this time tirelessly reforging and repairing equipment for the armored cavalry. On the other end, Biancha would herd their flocks of sheep closer to the south. Everyone would spontaneously enter a period of truce without fail. It was only during the third year of the Xian era that something unforeseen had happened. Then, the Hanshi tribe headed south and breached the banks of Hashi River to relieve considerable pressure on the provisions for the 12 tribes of Biancha. For some reason, in the past couple of days, Xiao Qiye had a premonition that there would be no truce this winter. Amuer's combat style was too aggressive. If what Amuer had done in early spring was to enter his enemy's territory to plunder food, then right now, Amuer seemed more like he was full on suppressing Libei with no intention of retreat. By transferring Hassan over here from Qidong, Amuer was deploying and letting loose his most powerful troops on the battlefields of Libei, which were completely unlike the small-scaled battles and skirmishes they had engaged in during the last few years. All of a sudden, the sound of horse hooves rose through the rain. Xiao Qiye hung back his flask and held up 2 fingers to signal for the imperial army behind him to get down. He crouched down, his face almost touching the mudhole, and used only his eyes to search the bushes in the rain. A troop of cavalrymen appeared amidst the pouring rain, the hooves of their horses splashing muddy water all over as they galloped. Xiao Qiye silently observed them. His longly blade gradually slid out of its sheath as the distance between them shortened. The sound of horse hooves intensified, while the sound of the Biancha cavalry's whistle dispersed in the rain. Xiao Qiye had already felt a slight tremor with the palm he had pressed against the ground. He did not move, and neither did the imperial army behind him. The Biancha cavalry was just right before them, just a couple steps more, and they would be trampling over the imperial army. But then, the horse in the lead suddenly neighed, its front hooves caught by the rope. The horse's front knees protruded forward, and it fell straight down. A wave of mud instantly splashed over Xiao Qiye's face. He moved. At the same time the cavalryman fell down along with the horse. Longly blade had already broken free of its sheath. Xiao Qiye cleaved down at the man. Fresh blood that spewed from the neck of the man gushed into the mud hole. The cavalrymen behind the man were caught off guard, and consequently, their formation was thrown into disarray. Xiao Qiye did not give the other party the chance to regroup. The imperial army followed him closely as he killed his way into the Bianchi cavalry. A blend of mud and blood trickled onto Xiao Qiye's nape. The pungency of on horseback flooded through his stomach, causing him to burn up all over. This was like a head-on blow that swiftly sent the gathered Bianchi cavalry's wits about them. Both parties were small squads, fighting at close quarters and killing one another as the rainwater poured over them. But it was a quick battle. By the time the Bianchi cavalry pulled themselves together, the imperial army had soundlessly vanished into the torrential rain again. The Bianchi cavalry's squads set up around the Tudalong banner all received varying degrees of assaults from the imperial army. As soon as they tried to follow up with an attack, these batches of ruffian soldiers would shrink back in retreat. The Bianchi cavalry was forced to come to a halt beyond the marshland of the Tudalong banner. Whenever they wanted to turn back and rejoin the others, the imperial army would sneak up on them and attack. After a few times, the Bianchi cavalry was beyond fed up. They could not use their speed to full advantage, and their charges were all over the place. They were just like headless flies being harassed by the imperial army, who shoved and kicked them. Pent-up rage simmered in them as they fought with ire and resentment. Xiao Qiye was hidden under the torrential rain all this time. The Bianchi cavalry could not make out the exact hiding place of the imperial army at all. Without the heavy armors and horses of the Libai armored cavalry, the imperial army could disappear from the Bianchi cavalry's field of vision as long as they lie low on the ground, coming and going elusively like a shadow. Very quickly, Xiao Qiye's wine was drunk down to the last drop. At the hour of Su, the sky grew completely dark. The Bianchi cavalry was still trapped by the imperial army at the fringe of the Tudalong banner, unable to advance or retreat. Chances of victory kept improving. It seemed as if Xiao Qiye had grasped the rhythm of the battle. He would not let it go to his head. It did not matter if the Bianchi cavalry showed weakness or resorted to intimidation, the rhythm remained firmly in his control. But time lapsed, and Xiao Qiye still had yet to catch sight of Hassan. The chill was even more intense in the night, and it was incomparably pitch dark all around. Xiao Qiye's boots were choked full of mud as rainy days made them wet and slippery. In order to prevent his blade from slipping off his hand, Xiao Qiye had it bound to the area between his thumb and index finger with a strip of cloth. At this point, the cloth was soaked through and utterly waterlogged. He squatted in place and tore away the old one to replace it with a new one. Man's physical strength was limited. This kind of back-and-forth battle required both sides to be on high alert at all times. Nerves had to be stretched taut, they could not afford to make even the slightest oversight or negligence. But Xiao Qiye had to catch his breath, too. He closed his eyes slightly and shook his head twice so that he would not go numb from the repetitive actions. By tomorrow latest at the hour of Chen, the reinforcements from the battlegrounds would have hurried their way over. Tonight was of crucial importance and heaven still favored Xiao Qiye. Even if the rain were to abate some, there would be no starlight and moonlight tonight. The night was still as the imperial army's disguise. Xiao Qiye huffed out warm air and flexed his 5 fingers before tightening his grip on Longly blade, but just as he rose to his feet again, the sound of disorderly footsteps rang out from the shrubbery. The person who brushed aside the leaves to reveal himself turned out to be Gu Jin. Xiao Qiye promptly had an ill sense of foreboding. Sure enough, he saw Gu Jin looking grim as he hastily kneeled on one knee and whispered, "Master, the roads to the site of battle are all blocked. Hassan's elite forces are right at the southeast, and they have cut off my access." Xiao Qiye's heart suddenly sank. It hit him almost instantly. He had walked into a trap. Every skilled commanding general knows the principle of imposing his will on the enemy but not allowing the enemy's will to be imposed on him. The reason Xiao Qiye had been scoring one victory after another since in Chu capital was because he was the one always taking the initiative. This allowed him to control the pulse and rhythm of the battlefield without fear of the enemy's numbers. But he had forgotten that Hassan was the same kind of commanding general as he was. This reign was no coincidence. It was a meticulously planned roundup. From the time Xiao Qiye's squad headed north, Hassan had already laid down an encirclement trap to hunt and kill this wolf pup. At the same time that Xiao Qiye was watching the Bianchi cavalry, he was also being observed by Hassan. Xiao Qiye thought he was taking the initiative when the reality was he was being constricted himself. Right from the moment he decided to turn around and head for the Tudalong banner, he had already fallen into the role of the passive player. The sound of horses' hooves rose once more. End chapter. Note. Hour of Su is 7 to 9 p.m. Hour of Chen is 7 to 9 a.m. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 152, Hassan. Raindrops rolled down the curved blade, dripping along its sharp edge. The horse under Hassan was snorting hot puffs of air. Hassan had already been waiting for a long time in the rain. It was 3/4 past the hour of high. The world had completely descended into darkness. Hassan had a head full of red hair. He was not like the men of Great Zhou who typically tied their hair up in a bun. Instead, he had his hair trimmed short with a small pigtail tied at the back of his head. After Huhlu's death, Bayan was transferred over to Hassan's side. He tugged at the reins as he followed behind Hassan and wrapped up his treasured military books before putting them back under his robe on his bosom. Cautiously, he asked, "How are you certain he will not escape?" Hassan scratched at his rain-drenched hair, letting it pile up in a mess as he replied, "He was very bold when fighting Huhlu. To put it in the words of those from Great Zhou, he is adept in the art of deception. I heard that he's the youngest son of the Prince of Libei, a wolf pup. As long as there's a chance to counterattack, he'll definitely not choose to flee." Bayan said, "He's indeed very bold and also very cautious. Compared to his elder brother, Xiao Qiye is an impulsive man." Hassan, having spoken to this point, was a little bashful. "Even though I'm no genius, I understand the pride of a genius. No matter how he warns himself, he will still lose a little of his prudence after defeating our powerful Huhlu at the Shazan camp. His desire to win is too strong. Bayan, even I can feel it. Like my father, he won't allow himself to cower and retreat. This is his strength, but also his weakness." Bayan quietly petted the horse. "Will we win?" "We will definitely win." When he said this, his eyes were bright and his words powerful. "He can't beat me." Hassan and Xiao Qiye had similar combat styles. With the way they fought their battles, they were both wild and unrestrained. Both Qizuyan and Lu Guangbai had been put through the ringer at his hands one after another, but he and Xiao Qiye were polar opposites in terms of their personalities. He was introverted and even a little bashful. The beautiful maidens of the Bianchi 12 tribes all had their eyes on him, yet just their gazes alone would make him go red in the face. He was Amuer's favorite son, and this was not only due to the formidability of his mother's clan but also because of his character. Xiao Fangxiu enjoyed nurturing little wolves in the wild. He even liked training his sons with hard knocks until they went howling in pain, but Amuer was the exact opposite. Before Hassan had come of age, Amuer never allowed Hassan to leave his side. Every battle that Hassan fought during his earlier years was all taught by Amuer himself in person. "You are also a genius," Bayan responded as an afterthought. Hassan laughed out loud as he wiped his scimitar and shook his head. "Bayan, I'm not. I'm an ordinary man. I merely found my own path from battling against geniuses. To be honest, before heading north, I was worried about meeting Xiao Jiming here because Xiao Jiming and Qizuyan belong to the same category of commanders. They're better at defense than offense. Do you understand? Not in the typical sense of defense, but one that leaves you with nowhere to make your moves and unable to find any vulnerability to attack. They are very tricky to deal with. But Xiao Qiye isn't the same. He's very. Hassan struggled to think of a description. In the end, he laughed. I can't put my finger on it, but he obviously has plenty of shortcomings, and he isn't even trying to hide them. Then he's arrogant. Bayan herded the horse over to Hassan's side. He raised his hand and lightly tapped Hassan's shoulder. You are our new great hero, the eagle of the desert, and the future husband of Duo Erlin. It doesn't matter how humble you are. Hassan, in our eyes, you are a genius bestowed upon the Hanshi tribe by the gods. You are not inferior to anyone else. Thank you. Hassan said, my good friend, you should have come to my side earlier. The both of them traded looks and exchanged smiles. All of a sudden, they heard a few urgent whistles resounding through the night. Hassan raised his head to the sky and a raindrop landed between his brows. It was no longer pouring like it had during the day. He patted the horse, looking westward of the Tudalong banner. It's time for us to haul in the net. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Hassan's elite forces did not enter the battleground at all. The troops he had sent before Xiao Qiye were all regular troops that were originally stationed east of the Tudalong banner. Moreover, the troops he deployed to the eastern mountain range had a firm grip on Zhao Hui, preventing Zhao Hui from turning around and providing reinforcements. The path towards the battlefront was also obstructed. He had turned the Tudalong banner into a sack-like trap to ensnare Xiao Qiye with. Xiao Qiye had no way out. Hassan had long prepared for him an elite force that was all recharged and raring to go in the east. Even if Xiao Qiye opted to escape, Hassan would also chase him down closely on horseback, so that Xiao Qiye, with the exposed vulnerability on his back, would once again become the target of the hunt. The sound of horse hooves rang out once again, this time accompanied by torches that pressed in from the east. The exhausted imperial army could only retreat. Although the rain had stopped, the chill had intensified. Even Tantai, who had no choice but to huff warm air in his frozen hands. Xiao Qiye walked in the mud, with the huffing and panting of the soldiers behind him. They had to retreat back to the marshland of the Tudalong banner as soon as possible, but Hassan did not miss this opportunity. His elite forces had eaten their fill during the day and now, they were lashing hard at their horses to spur them on, giving the imperial army no time to retreat at all. The imperial army that had been split into small groups hid themselves among the shrubbery and grassy fields, but Hassan's troops were meticulous in their scouting and left them with nowhere to conceal themselves. Gu Jin, who had good hearing, very quickly discerned that the horses' hooves were coming this way. Xiao Qiye raised an arm to wipe his cheek and looked back at the pitch-black night. Flames abruptly lit up the horizon. Hassan's cavalry was like the falcon encroaching upon the sky not far away, its two wings spread out as it charged forth in what seemed like a glide. Master! Gu Jin led his own horse out. You should leave first. Mount your horse and head north. Xiao Qiye remained where he was. Pass on military information along the way and tell them to withdraw back to the marshland. Tell Tantai Hu not to persist in fighting and to retreat immediately. The Biancha cavalry was getting closer. Xiao Qiye could even hear the sounds of horses snorting hot air. Gu Jin remained in place and hesitated for a moment. Xiao Qiye said with calm and composure, I have several hundred men here. It's not a problem to fight and retreat at the same time. I will make plans again once we retreat inside the marshland. Gu Jin knew that Xiao Qiye would not change his command at his time, so he mounted his horse, whipped it into action, and charged into the night. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Hassan had already seen the figures. The cavalry whistled, as though they were encircling the wild beasts in the desert. They did not rely on military flags to convey messages. The whistle rapidly relayed from the center army to both flanks. Following right after, the cavalry on both flanks turned their horses around to assemble in the center, turning the falcon with its wings spread into a straight arrow whose target was Xiao Qiye. In war, speed was everything. Hassan knew the consequences of hesitation. When it came to Xiao Qiye, he had to fight a quick battle. Otherwise, if Xiao Qiye were to retreat to the marshland and get the opportunity to catch his breath, it could very well lead to the next surprise attack on them. That's him. Bayan followed closely behind and pointed at Xiao Qiye as he hollered in Biancha language. Xiao Qiye. Hassan pulled off his scimitar and bent low at the same time. He did not need Bayan to remind him, he had already recognized Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye's height and appearance were far too conspicuous. His expression as he pursed his lips and looked back was simply identical to Xiao Fangxiu. Xiao Qiye wrung the dripping wet strip of cloth and swiftly wrapped it tightly around the space between his thumb and index finger. He watched as the cavalry pressed in towards them, his attention all but sucked away by Hassan's red hair. He counted the distance quietly. Just as Hassan's horse was about to trip on the rope, Hassan suddenly turned sideways and lowered his arm to slice the rope that had been hidden among the grass with one blow. The cavalry at the back dashed their way in without a hitch. The galloping cavalrymen brandished their scimitars, but Xiao Qiye did not move. In the blink of an eye, the hooves of the Biancha's horses sank into the camouflage horse pits, sending a number of men tumbling off their horses once more. The people in front fell to the ground, but Hassan, who was at the back, seemed to have anticipated it. That one step he had taken a beat slower earlier had been meant to test the grounds. Xiao Qiye raised his finger, and the imperial army jumped over the shrubs and broke into a dash. Hassan's horse was snorting hot air as Hassan blew the whistle again. These hastily dug pits for trapping horses were not deep enough, and they were able to simply leap over to give chase right behind Xiao Qiye. Hassan's target was clear, and that was Xiao Qiye. As long as he could kill Xiao Qiye, the scattered imperial army would be just a bunch of men without a leader. The grain wagons within the marshland of the Tudalong banner would then naturally fall into their hands. Xiao Qiye stepped through the mud. A horse had already caught up next to him. The Biancha cavalryman on the horse barked at Xiao Qiye in Biancha language. Xiao Qiye leaped forward and crouched down on stable feet to dodge the scimitar coming towards him. Following right after, he sliced apart the Biancha cavalryman's saddle. Threatened by the blade, the startled horse was thrown into disorientation. Xiao Qiye caught hold of the cavalryman's arm that had been wielding the blade, but instead of hacking it off, he yanked hard on it to flip himself up the horse. Unable to withstand the force of gravity, the cavalryman tumbled off the horse, sending up a spray of mud. The horse of the Guma tribe, having had a change of masters, wretchedly flung its head from side to side and refused to run any more. Behind him, Hassan was pressing in close towards him. Xiao Qiye clamped down hard on the belly of the horse and yanked the reins, forcing the horse to crash its way through at an angle. Hassan had been too hurried in his pursuit of Xiao Qiye. Muddy water went splashing as both horses collided. Longly blade went slicing through the air towards Hassan's chest with such ferocity that Hassan did not dare to be negligent and parried the blow with all his strength. So heavy. Hassan's arms sank, and the scimitar almost slipped out of his hand under Xiao Qiye's force. He immediately understood just how extraordinary Xiao Qiye's arm strength was, so he avoided the glint as Xiao Qiye hacked down on him, no longer meeting Xiao Qiye head-on with force. The cavalrymen who were successively catching up behind them clung close to their horses' backs. The horse beneath Xiao Qiye stirred restlessly as they reached out with their scimitars to sever his horse's front knees. The horse whinnied in pain, and its entire front body fell over into the mud hole. Xiao Qiye rolled off his horse. He was already surrounded. The Biancha cavalrymen formed a circle around Xiao Qiye, and the fleeing imperial army swore and cursed out loud, "Bloody hell!" The viceroy fell off. The imperial army who had yet to spring into the Tudalong banner promptly turned back, drew their blades, and lunged into the group of cavalrymen. They followed suit, doing what was done earlier. As long as they could not hang onto the Bianchi cavalry and leap onto their horses, they would hack off the horses' legs and send the Bianchi cavalry tumbling off their horses. They kept what Xiao Qiye had said firmly in mind, that the Bianchi cavalry was not skilled at standing on the ground and fighting at close quarters. But that was directed at the troops that had been crossing swords with the Libai armored cavalry in the north. Hassan had fought battles with the Great Zhou's best infantry in the south. The one who had clashed with him was Lu Guangbai, and Xiao Qiye's experience with cavalrymen, to sum it up, had all came from Lu Guangbai. Hassan's elite forces were not the least bit afraid of landing on the ground at all. On the contrary, they were rather composed and unhurried when they faced up against the imperial army after dismounting. They did not even need any buffer time at all, they could fight the instant they got up after rolling to the ground. Fuck. The imperial army, who had never suffered a defeat before, cursed in unison. These bastards are even stronger than us. End chapter. Note, hour of high is 9 to 11 p.m. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 153, Defeat. The imperial army was very much like Xiao Qiye, but they were a lot more craftier than him. This was a group of soldiers that gave the Libai armored cavalry complicated feelings. After the Yanji era, their reputation waned and they were reduced to being mere ornamental decorations in Chu capital. Even their original patrol duty had been snatched away by the 8 great training divisions. In the decades that followed, all they did were odd jobs, and they even appear to be more than happy to simply muddle and idle their way through life. But then, they met Xiao Qiye, and it was as if they had been wiped clean of grime to finally shine in all their full glory in Chu capital. The imperial army was unlike the Libai armored cavalry and the Qidong garrison troops. They were able to overlook all the noise and focus all of their attention solely on Xiao Qiye. They could not hear a single one of the criticisms against Xiao Qiye. As long as Xiao Qiye waved his hand and signaled them, they would be willing to go through the most severe of trials and tribulations alongside him. This was a brew of loyalty blended with the code of brotherhood. A prime example of it was right at this moment. The enemy clearly outnumbered them, yet the imperial army felt no fear. They chopped off the horses' legs belonging to the Bianchi cavalry's vanguard so that a break opened up in Hansen's encirclement. However, the number of follow-up cavalry multiplied exponentially, and these men were all highly adaptable to boot. Without even needing Hassan to give his command, they had already figured out the imperial army's intentions. The imperial army still wanted to hack off more legs, but the Bianchi cavalry dismounted from their horses before charging into the battlefield. They had no armors, and the furs they donned were light and cold resistant, so it was with extreme agility that they moved. Unlike Huhlu's squad, each of them had a spare scimitar at the side of their horses, and pike daggers tightly secured on the outside of their thighs. In the event that their scimitars were damaged, they could still use the reserve scimitars, or swap over to the pike daggers to fight at close quarters. They were taciturn, well-trained men. Xiao Qiye was gasping for breath as he savagely swept his eyes over this elite force. Hassan did not say a word. He did not need to engage in any form of communication with Xiao Qiye. He did not want to use Xiao Qiye to threaten Xiao Fangxiu either, and he knew very well that leaving Xiao Qiye alive would mean no end to troubles in the future. Now was the moment to kill off Xiao Qiye. Hassan locked eyes with Xiao Qiye. He gripped his scimitar with one hand and released the reins with the other hand, letting it fall gently into the mud hole. They were like certain beasts facing off against each other in confrontation, their abhorrence for the other mixed in with the stench of blood. Hassan kept moving, wading through the muddy water while observing Xiao Qiye. Sporadic raindrops left in the night sky dripped onto the back of Xiao Qiye's hand as he gripped Longli blade and followed Hassan with his eyes. This was a strange kind of silence. Tumultuous sound of killing clearly abounded all around them, and yet Xiao Qiye found it quiet, so quiet that his hair was standing on end. He had to restrain himself before he could suppress that murderous intent to kill bubbling up in his body. Hassan was no longer moving. He seemed to have noticed Xiao Qiye's testiness. They both vied for the right to grasp the upper hand on this battlefield and attempted to influence its atmosphere. This made it clear that there was no way they could coexist. What they wanted was absolute control over their own rhythm. A water drop slid along the back of Xiao Qiye's slightly bulging hand. At the very instant it dripped off, Hassan burst into action. His red hair was like a flaming torch in the dark night, charging right before Xiao Qiye's eyes the very instant the mud splashed aside. In the blink of an eye, Hassan's scimitar pressed in towards Xiao Qiye's throat. Xiao Qiye took a sudden step back, and the mud splashed out in a fan-like arc along with the movements of his legs and feet. He swung up Longli blade in a half-circle, and both of them collided in mid-air. The impact forced Hassan's feet to slide back some, but he regained his footing and bounced back into action the next moment, even cleverly learning to dodge. Longli blade was a heavyweight executioner's blade, and Xiao Qiye's arm strength was what it relied on. Every move Hassan made during the fight was executed with the intention to hack off Xiao Qiye's arm. Each time Xiao Qiye wielded his blade, he would strike at empty air. Even if he caught up with Hassan, Hassan would immediately turn his scimitar sideways and brush past it so that he would not have to shoulder Xiao Qiye's terrifying strength. Assaulters were also sneaking up behind Xiao Qiye out of nowhere. He used and pushed his sight and hearing to full capacity, but his physical strength was like water already splashed. In less than an hour, Xiao Qiye felt his own movements slowing down a little. Hassan lunged once again, and at the same time, a strong gust of wind suddenly came assaulting him from behind. Xiao Qiye abruptly strode half a step to sidestep and dodge the scimitar behind his back, then backhandedly grasped the arm of the man behind him. Following right after, he spun around to kick Hassan over and break the arm of the man who sneaked up on him from behind. The scimitar on the other side cleaved down on Xiao Qiye's arm. A loud thud rang out as the blow was blocked by the arm guard that Shenzhequan had gifted him. A slurry of mud erupted like exploding artillery shells as the Bianchi cavalry simultaneously bore their scimitars down on Longli blade. Xiao Qiye promptly lifted a fist with his left hand and punched one of them over. The pressure on Longli blade promptly subsided some, and he lowered his body and made to lift the blade. With his scimitar cracked from the impact from Longli's blade, Hassan abandoned it. He pulled out the pike daggers from both sides of his legs, and sprang when he saw his chance. All of a sudden, one of the Imperial army pounced and grabbed Hassan around his waist. He even used a wrestling technique but failed to trip Hassan. Hassan flipped over the pike dagger, slid it along that man's armor, and viciously stabbed it into the side of his neck. Blood spurted like a fountain of spring water. Hassan had yet to pull out the pike dagger, instead turning his head aside first to dodge Xiao Qiye's blade. Men were dying on both sides. The Imperial army did not expect Hassan's elite force to be this formidable, and likewise, this elite force did not expect the Imperial army to be able to hang in there for so long. The Bianchi cavalry at the periphery took out iron chains attached with small copper balls. These kinds of chains were similar in appearance to the chains used by the Libe armored cavalry but much lighter. They pressed in, shrinking the encirclement area, and when Xiao Qiye's Longli blade was pinned down once again, they flung countless chains towards Xiao Qiye. The copper balls caught onto Xiao Qiye's arms and legs. With Xiao Qiye now entangled in the iron chains, they dragged him over to the ground in one abrupt move. Hassan's pike dagger shot right towards Xiao Qiye's face. Xiao Qiye practically used up all of his strength to drag his arms over to block the blow, causing the Bianchi cavalry of the other end who was pulling at the chains to stumble in unison. Once again, the pike dagger slammed into the arm guard with a thud, but this piece of top-quality iron could not withstand this kind of repeated blows raining upon it one after another. Xiao Qiye felt the dogskin string snap. The arm guard was already dented. Xiao Qiye attempted to break free of the chains, but there were simply too many for his arms to bear. He tilted his head to spit out the muddy sand in his mouth, watching as the scimitars of the cavalry went straight for his own throat. At this moment, Xiao Qiye saw the billowy black sky. The winds of Hanjian mountains blew against his drenched hair, and he thought of Shenzequan in between ragged gasps. Hassan's victory was initially already within grasp, but who would have expected Xiao Qiye to shoulder the combined force of all the tugging and pulling from those holding him down and raise both legs to kick over a blade-wielding cavalryman. The iron chain securing him suddenly went swinging. It was impossible to tell if it was sweat or muddy water trickling along his temples, but blue veins visibly protruded as Xiao Qiye executed a kick-up and flipped himself up to his feet. However, one person alone could not salvage the situation, much like one log could not prop up a collapsing building. During the time Xiao Qiye executed his move, the cavalry had yanked the chains taut. He had gotten on his feet for only a mere moment before he was once again dragged back to the ground. Even if he was blessed with wings, escape was impossible tonight. In the nick of time, the ground suddenly started to quake. Water droplets among the shrubbery and branches leaped about as the battle call of a war horn reverberated through the boundless night. Hassan looked out towards the south. As expected, he saw a person single-handedly charging over in a mad dash, and following close in his wake was a black tide that similarly steamrolled everything in its path under the crushing darkness of the night. The closer they got, the more aggressively the mudhole shook from that muffled thunder-like roar of horses' hooves, a testament to the heavy weight of steel armors. Hassan immediately whistled. The cavalry flipped onto their horses in an orderly fashion and swiftly withdrew northward. Before he turned the horse around, Hassan regretfully glanced towards Xiao Qiye. He raised two fingers, tapped his temple, and leaned towards Xiao Qiye to bid him a polite farewell. Then he took his leave and sped away, leaving a scene of devastation behind in his wake. The black armored cavalry charged over to Xiao Qiye's side, circling around him once. Xiao Fangxiu removed his helmet and looked askance at Xiao Qiye. In a grave voice, he commanded those behind him, "Untie your second young master." What an unsightly sight! The expression in Xiao Qiye's eyes was scathingly cold and grave. It was the shame of having his first taste of defeat. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. There were commanding generals of the 5 camps in the Shazan camp, all of whom reported to Xiao Fangxiu. Based on ranking, Xiao Qiye's position was at the very bottom. However, he had been thoroughly defeated this time, and he cut such a sorry figure as he squatted outside of the tent and rinsed half his body with cold water that the commanding generals who came and went would all cast him a glance. Xiao Qiye did not seem to feel the blade-inflicted wounds on his shoulders, chest, and back as the cold water scoured his body pale. Zhou Qiankai lifted up the flap after the meeting in the tent had been dismissed. As he looked at the sight of Xiao Qiye squatting at the side with his back to him, his reproach had all but turned into a twinge of bemusement. He called out, "Come in and drink a bowl of warm milk. Don't you fall sick on such a cold day?" Xiao Qiye mumbled an answer and rose to put away the water bucket before walking into the tent. There was a fire going in the tent. Xiao Qiye's armor had been so badly damaged that it could no longer be used. Xiao Fangxiu was currently examining the dented top-quality iron of the arm guard. Zhou Qiankai instructed the military medic to dress Xiao Qiye's wounds, so Xiao Qiye sat bare-chested on the little stool and remained still. After some time, Chen Yang, Gu Jin, Tan Taihu, and Wu Ziu entered. "Give your commanding general a report of the casualty count." Xiao Fangxiu tossed the arm guard back onto the table, sat down, and said to Chen Yang. Chen Yang quietly answered, "The Imperial Army lost 300 men." Louder, Xiao Fangxiu looked at Chen Yang. "Why are you hanging your head looking all so dejected?" Chen Yang raised his voice. "The Imperial Army lost 300 men. 36 men sustained severe injuries, and 8 got away with light injuries. The Imperial Army was Xiao Qiye's roots. He had to be responsible for all its casualties, fatal or otherwise. This army no longer held any possibility of further expansion, for it was unique and distinctive. The moment the entire force was decimated, even Xiao Qiye himself would not be able to rebuild it in Libya. This meant that as long as the imperial army suffered a defeat in a battle, it would face exponential losses. While 300 people were nothing to the Qidong garrison troops or the Libya armored cavalry, it was considered heavy casualty to the imperial army. Silence descended upon the tent. Tan Taihu snuck a couple of glances at Chen Yang and Gu Jin before finally plucking up his courage and speaking up. Hassan caught us off guard, Master was also. Now report the casualties of the 3 great training divisions of Liu Yang to your commanding general. Xiao Fangxiu ordered. Chen Yang paused for a moment. The Liu Yang Southern Route Army lost 892 men, 45 sustained heavy injuries, and 237 suffered light injuries. Zhao Hui was initially fighting on the northern route. This southern route army was established at the last minute to rescue your imperial army. A total of 2,000 men, while digging the collapsed bridle path, encountered a surprise attack by the cavalry that Hassan left stationed at the northern route. Practically half the men died. Xiao Fangxiu continued, if you had just stayed where you were, you would have met with them in just under 4 hours, but you impulsively turned around and headed for the Tudalong banner. How are you going to account for this loss to Zhao Hui? Xiao Qiye said nothing. Xiao Fangxiu continued, you should remember that you're the commanding general in charge of escorting and transportation of military supplies, not the commanding general for combat. To think you'd forcibly assault Hassan's squad with a few hundred men. Did a donkey kick you in the head, Xiao Qiye? Zhou Qiankai originally should not have spoken, but Xiao Qiye had just retreated from the battlefield, and as his Shifu, it was inevitable for his heart to ache for him. Thus, he said, Hassan has been planning this for a long time, and it just so happened that they'd chance upon a rainstorm. The situation was urgent then. Ah yeah. You never treated the Libya armored cavalry as your own duty at all. In your eyes, there's only the imperial army. With his hand on his knees, Xiao Fangxiu suddenly turned stern. The battle at Bianbo camp went to your head, letting you get carried away by your success. You regarded everyone as Huhlu. Your defeat today to Hassan is a lesson. What exactly do you have that'd possess you to fight with him head on? Lift your head up. Wu Ziyu could no longer bear it and fell to his knees on the ground with a thud. Once he kneeled, Tan Taihu cluelessly followed suit and kneeled. Then, thud, thud, Chen Yang and Gu Jin kneeled too. Xiao Fangxiu swiftly looked towards them. Wu Ziyu said in an extremely feeble voice, Your lordship. It's not what you think. My legs have just gone all wobbly. End chapter.